Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's session of test automation using UiPath Test Suite, the developer series. This is part 2 of 4. And if you want to go to the next slide, Atul. Tonight, we have Atul, Trikha, and Sreenivasa from Parantan, and myself. I'm Diana Gray. I'm the Community Marketing Manager at UiPath. So we just want to welcome you tonight. I'll be the working on the questions in the background with other MVPs, and Atul and Sri will be presenting. And if you want to go to the next slide. So we just want to really welcome you to these developer community events. They're managed by the UiPath MVPs in Canada, Latin America, and USA. And we want to encourage you guys to network, so feel free to share your information. We're going to leave you on mute till the end, but please put your questions in the chat. And if you have any topics that you want to cover in the future, I'll put my email in the chat as well, and you can just let me know. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Atul to get started.
Thank you so much, Rana. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Good afternoon, good evening. So today, like Dinah mentioned, this is a 4-part series about the test suite and the UiPath Test Suite. We have covered the part 1 on July 12th. And in that one, we have basically covered what was the building blocks for our UiPath Test Suite. Not only that, we have covered basics like what is testing, what is software testing, why it is required, what are the different levels and type of testing. Along with that, we give a 30,000 overview about the UiPath Test Suite. It was just an introduction of that product. And then we also take some good interesting question and answer related to that, like how we can auto heal the scripts. And even we had a discussion about the demo, which a very brief demo we give about the shift left approach, which was to demonstrate how the studio, a glimpse of UiPath Studio, also how UiPath Test Suite is integrated with the UiPath platform, and we give the demo using the computer vision. That was just a glimpse. Today, this is all about going into more deep on each of the topics or each of the what we call UiPath Test Suite is a family of products, right? So it has 4 components, and in today's session, we will be going on each of those components in a little bit more details. It will be a session where we will be more unlike the first session was more theoretical. This is going to be more towards it will be a balance. We will go through cover some points in the slides, and then we will also demonstrate hands-on like how the studio look in actual environment also. So this is going to be an interesting session, and in this session, like I mentioned, we will start with we are going to cover all the 4 components, all the products that makes UiPath Test Suite. But before that, we will be starting the session with how to get started with the UiPath Test Suite, because many of you may be new to RPA or UiPath, or even new to the test suite also. So we'll start with the basic. We'll not go in very much details, but the pain point, like when I started those areas, when I was looking for a couple of reference. So I have gathered all the points based upon my experience. And on those points, I'll try to go a little bit more details, but those things which are straightforward, I'll try to keep it high level. But definitely in our next sessions, we have where we will be actually working on creating the test cases and all those. We will have a lot of time to discuss in details. And the 4th session is all about discussions and wrap up. So we have a lot to cover. So without wasting any further time, let's get started with the UiPath Test Suite part 2. So if you remember in part 1, we at a high level, we covered about what exactly a test suite is, right? So if you see the current diagram visualize all the tools that come with the UiPath Test Suite and how they all are integrated. The very first component here is the most important one is the test manager or the test manager hub. They are like, let's call as a test manager, but they are 2 different. Test manager is more over more like a web application that is hosted by the Test Manager Hub. And the Test Manager Hub is basically the main purpose. Test Management Hub is to integrate the UiPath Test Suite with the third party. It is built on a flexible connector architecture. And the main purpose here is to how we can integrate UiPath Test Suite with the third party tools like your Devops or like Azure Devops, Jira. So it is for the mainly for the integration, but the web component, what we call the test manager, is the web application. And then we have the studio. This is like a canvas where you are drawing your automations or creating your automation. Then the next component is the orchestrator. Orchestrator is also a web application. What it does is it enables us to basically orchestrate robots or other resources, automation resources, right? That is the, it is all the things, all the resources or things that are required for automation, you can manage in a central place. That is what the orchestrator is. And then at the end, we have the testing robots. So testing robots are basically, they are the execution host that runs processes designed in the studio. By leveraging the UiPath Test Robots, you can basically execute test on demand, continuous or at scale. So these are the main components, the four main components: Test Manager, UiPath Studio, then the orchestrator, and the testing robots. And then if you will see, there are few integration happening. One is the ALM tool. And in this event today, we will be focusing more on the DevOps side. But if I get a chance, we have some bandwidth, I will also show how it works with the Jira also. And then in the side, we have CI/CD. Again, in today's meeting, I will be focusing on the DevOps, but again, we can integrate with Jenkins and other platform also. So that is what is going to be our starting point. So now we understand that, okay, there are four components and theoretically, right? I mean, if from the beginner, somebody has to start, right? I mean, whether they have experience in RPA before, or this is the first time they are coming, they are going to start their automation or UiPath journey. So how they will get started, right? First thing first, first thing is like what where we should start, right? So the starting point here is we need to start by registering in UiPath. So if you will see here in this slide, this is, let me actually show the laser one here. So, okay. So if you will see here, when you will log into the uipath.com, and then it will present you like try it for free. And that is where when you will click on this button, it will bring you to another screen where you will be presented with multiple options. The first option by default is for the enterprise trial, which give more resources, like it gives you 5 attended test robots, but that is limited for a 60 days. So that enterprise UiPath Enterprise Automation Cloud will be only for 60 days. But there's another option. If you will see here, this option is about getting a free account, which is the community account. And that's what I'm showing here. If you will click on that account, that will bring you to the next one, where you will be creating a UiPath Automation Cloud community account. And that is going to be the starting point, where you will be now starting with registering your account. Let's say you have a Gmail account, or you want to go with the email. So that then you will get option here. When you will start, you want to create your own email again, or you want to do the federation using the Google or Microsoft. So this is going to be your starting point to start the wonderful automation journey, and specifically in terms of test suite. But even if you are talking about RPA, this is going to be your starting point. Coming next, once you are logged into, you have created your account. Now, this is the first screen you will see when you will be registering your account. This is called the Automation Cloud. This is where you will get access to all the products we are going to discuss today. The very first thing you need to do is, like I mentioned, there is Studio, there is Orchestrator, there are test robots, and there's a test manager, right? So in the very first screen that you will see in the UiPath Automation Cloud is an option to download the UiPath Studio. That is, you need to do number one. So again, there's no specific pattern, but I mean, the first point, if I'm you, I will start with downloading the studio. That is the canvas where you will be, or the starting point, or the IDE where you will create your automation, or you will create your test cases. The second thing you will see here is a default instance of orchestrator will be created, and that is the point number 2. And you will click here, you will be you can go to the orchestrator, and you can always go the orchestrator in the second option here, which is right here. And then there, if you will notice here, there's no option of test manager, or I'm also going to talk a little bit about the data service, but there's no test manager here, right? So how in the default window, when you will register for the first time, you may not see the test manager. So what you need to do in that case is click on this admin button here. Once you do that, it will show you the tenant settings. Like if you see here, let me go to the next screen here. In the when you click on the admin, it will take you the tenant settings, and in the test tenant setting, if you will go here in this particular, then it will present you a kind of options here. What service, the service which are already enabled will not come here, but those services like test manager and the data service, for our demo purpose, I'm selecting data services, but you can opt out not to select that one. The main point here is to test manager. So you need to enable that service, and how you will do that, click on the admin, go to the screen here, tenant settings. From the tenant setting, enable the test manager, and then click the save button. So this is how you will get access to the test manager. Now you have your studio downloaded, you have the orchestrator running, you got your test manager running, and now we will be discussing about the robots. Maybe little bit, there's not much there. It is similar to like any RPA, but we'll cover that at the end, how we'll get access to the RPA. But this whole automation cloud will give you access. How many, if you are going with the community version, then you have one testing robot license. Now this is the starting point for the UiPath. Now let's talk about what is going on. I'm not able to, yeah. So now let me go to the next line. Visit, like I mentioned, our demo is this event is focusing more on the Azure DevOps today, but I mean the steps are very much similar for the Jira also. In my example, because for the test suite, we have to we are talking about the test manager, that how it can you can link your requirements, your stories, your defects with the external ALM tool. Test manager do provide options where you can create your own requirement. It has the complete requirement framework by its own. But let's say if you are already having some other tool like Azure DevOps or Jira, then we want to integrate it, right? So this is just a step for this specific demo. These are not related to our test suite discussion, but just in case if you are following this this whole meeting today in the event today, so I just want to cover up that. Just if you have already not done that, click on the go into this particular site which I mentioned here. Basically it is, if you in search in Azure DevOps, it will take you to this site, and then click on start free. That will give you, I think, a 1 year of trial period for the Azure DevOps. And once you got signed up there in Azure DevOps, then you need to do is create your organization. So that is what is the step that you need to do. This is required for our demo because we are going to see how we will be integrating our test manager within with an external ALM tool, and we will also cover at a high level about the CI/CD integration. So this is a prerequisite for our demo. So if you will go next here, now I have done with creating my Azure DevOps account. Now I will be covering again. Let's see how much the time permits. But here is the just the overview how that integration will work. So let me take a pause. Maybe I'll stop sharing here, or yeah, let me stop sharing here and share one document here, which will give you a little bit of overview when I'm talking about test manager. Or let's not do that. Let's continue as this, and I'll maybe take a pause when we are actually going into the environment, and I'll cover this point. But at this point, let's understand this is what I'm showing in this screen is once you will integrate There are few steps that I will share a document how you will do that. But this is the step where I will providing an integration between my test manager and the third-party ALM tool, so that anytime I create any defects or any stories epic in my ALM tool, they get automatically sync with the test manager. And then there's so many other things that you can do with this integration. And the next also, this is just a screen, but we're going to cover it, is the CI/CD pipeline using the Azure Devops. What we need to do is the automation that you have created in your test suite, we will putting in the repository, and then we will also discuss how to create pipelines. But this is overall a high level of test manager. What we are going to start up, we have created our registered our UiPath test account. We have installed the studio. We are already given with the orchestrator. We have enabled the test manager, registered into Azure Devops, and created the organization. And then just a high level at this time is like how we will be going to integrate test manager with our ALM tool, and how we are going to provide that test CI/CD also pipelines also. Okay, so this is what you need to start your UiPath or your test automation using the UiPath Test Suite. These are a couple of prerequisites. Again, I mentioned data service. I'll tell you why I did that. But let's move on with our first component, going in a little bit details. So test manager. Test Manager, like I mentioned, is a web application. What it does is it allows you to easily manage your testing process or your automation processes. What they do is they cover the functional areas like assigning automation from studio to test case. We'll take example of that. How can I, when I'm creating a test automation or a test case, how can I simply assign that automation from studio to a test manager test case? Then how we can link our test cases to a requirement. And test manager also can now give you a nice dashboard where you can quickly overview all the test result. It provides the reporting. You can also document your manual test. So UiPath Test Manager has a lot to cover, and it has many important features. So in order to start, let's understand what exactly is a test management is, right? Before we understand, we know that test manager, I'm talking about test manager, but the question here is what exactly I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to present here. We're talking about the test suite, right? But why we need a test suite? So, or what exactly is a test management is? I'm not sure if you have not watched. There's a very nice, a precise video, a UiPath Forward 4, in which it is very nicely they have explained what exactly is test management is, or the introduction of the test suite. And how it goes is, so if someone has to explain, or if I have to explain you what test management is, I'll start answering that question, answer with a question. And the question here is when we are ready to release a software, right? That is a big question. The test management all start with that question. Are we ready? Can we release this software into production tomorrow, right? But to answer that question, we have a series of other questions, right? And these series of questions are the software that I have developed, or the automation or the application, the automation I did, whether it meets all the requirement, right? Coming back to our part one, right? We talked about requirements, non-functional and functional requirement. But does my software meet all the requirements? Because that is going to be the acceptance criteria, right? So does my software cover all the requirements? And I have all the test cases? Do I have test cases for those requirements, right? How many of them are getting executed? How many of them are getting passed? How many are getting failed, right? So all these metrics or all these questions are required to understand the test management, because the first question is whether I'm ready to release is can be answered by all these questions. If I have covered all my requirements, yes, all my test cases are getting passed. I don't have any critical defects, right? And that is how I can say that I can answer the question whether my software is ready for the release. right? And that is all what comprised of the test management. Now, all these answers can be answered using all these questions can be answered using the UiPath Test Suite, and that is where the test manager comes into picture. Let me go one step back here. Um, so if you will see, this is the dashboard of the UiPath Test Suite. Here you will see there are bars. This bar chart is all about. Let me start here. So if you will see here, these are the test cases that are getting passed. You can choose between a daily option or a weekly option, but this bar graph shows how many test cases are getting executed, how many of them are getting passed, how many are getting failed, along with some KPIs. And these KPIs are, for example, here, how many critical issues I have, how much is the test coverage, right? And what is the automation rate? Like automation rate is like, let's say if I have 20 test cases, but I have automated only 15 of them, or I have automated only 10 of them, then the automation rate here will be 50%. But in my case, I have covered all my automation, like all the test cases are automated. That's why it is showing coverage as 100%. So these are the information that you will get in your dashboard. So after that, if you will see, we talked about the requirement, right? I mean, that is how typically anything, right? I mean, a software can only be accepted or is successful when it meets all its requirement, right? In this case, what it is this test suite give us, you can create your requirements here. You can create your test case, your epics, or your user stories, your task. Along with that, like I mentioned in the previous step, you have the capability to test suite gives us the capability where you will be able to integrate your test manager with the ALM tools. And that is all with this requirement here is you will be able to, when you create a test case here, you will be able to link your test case with the requirement. The next step come is the next is where I jumped into a couple of slides. Let me go back. Yeah. So the next is the test cases. This is where you will create your test cases. The test cases can be linked with it can be automated or it can be manual. And down the line after 2 or 3 slides, I'll show you like how we can manually also create a test suite using an amazing another tool from UiPath called Test Capture. But this is the place where you can create your test cases, whether it's through automation or through the manual steps. And then once you do that, then comes the next part, which is your test set. Test set is basically a logical grouping of your test cases. For example, if I have, let's say, hundreds of test cases, I want to only execute, let's say, 10 top critical test cases as part of my smoke test. I don't want to execute all my thousands of test cases or hundreds of test cases every time let's say I give a minor release, or maybe I only want to with the daily build, I only want to test a basic set of my critical test cases. Let's call that smoke test, right? So this test set gives us the capability where you can logically group your test cases, and that's what makes a test set. Now, test set can be now you should be able to execute both the test case using like I mean you can create you can execute using continuously using CI/CD, or you can also schedule on demand. The next is our test results. That is the most important, where you will be able to see how your test uh, overall the results are going. And with that, I talked about the manual testing. This is the where the another features from the UiPath is the tool called the test capture. When you will click, and I am going to demonstrate that in the actual environment. When you will go here, you will see that there's an option here called the test capture. When you will click on that, it will open a window that will automatically start recording your steps. And then you can publish that document, you can publish it into the test manager, you can create a documentation out of that. So this is again a very powerful feature from the UiPath. So this is what is at a high level a test suite or a test manager is. Before I jump into Studio Pro, let's see how the test manager, which I just discussed, looks like. So I'm going to stop my sharing and I'll start again. And I need confirmation from Diana or Shri if you are able to see my screen. And I'm going
Yes,
to,
Atul.
okay, so I'll start in a minute here. New share, and this will be my screen too. Can you see both the screens or only one screen?
Just one right now.
And do you see the orchestrator?
We are seeing the document with the
Yeah.
text capture.
Okay, so let me stop sharing. What happened here? I'm actually sharing the orchestrator at this stage.
No, still the same slide.
Okay, how can I stop my sharing and start again?
You have that green button just says stop share screen.
I'm not getting that option, Diana, for some. Okay, yeah, I got it. Sorry, my bad. Okay, so let me start again with my screen number 2, which is for the orchestrator. Now you should see the orchestrator.
Yeah, we see it now.
Perfect, great. So we are talking about the test manager, and in the very initial, when we were doing the setup, we talked about this is the automation cloud. When you will come here, you will see orchestrator, something like this one. So let me go back actually. So this is going to be the landing page. And if you remember, we talked about going into the admin section and enabling. Once you enable that, you will see a test manager here. And that is what we just discussed briefly. So let's see how does that look like. When you click on the test manager, it will show you all your projects that you have created. And you can, what you can do is, let me go back. So if you have not created any project, all you need to do is click a new project and then provide the name, some prefix. This is required because all your test cases will start with that prefix and a brief description, and that's it. Once you do that, it will create a test project for you. And when you will click go here, and that is what I have just covered. We covered about the requirement tabs, right? So we covered about this is where all your requirement, if you have integrated your test manager with a third-party tool, then your requirements will automatically get synchronized here. And then we covered about the test cases, and any test cases if you have published will come here, and followed by your test sets, test results, and these are the 4 sections we have covered. Now let's take a look about the project setting in order to integrate. What we need to do in order to integrate with the ALM tool here is, let me open one document and I'll quickly go through both the documents to give you an idea what it is, and then we will share along with the other documents with this meeting. So here, if you will see, the very first step you need to do here is in order to integrate is you need to this document go through all the steps. Very first step is when you have already signed into your Azure DevOps account, you will click on the browse. Let me increase the font here, this one. So you will go to the Azure marketplace, and in this marketplace you need to search for the UiPath. It will give you 2 options. One is for the UiPath Test Manager, and other is I believe it is called UiPath Integration. So UiPath Integration is required for the CI/CD, and the UiPath Test Manager is required for the integration with our Test Manager. So what you need to do next is in the Test Manager, select the tool, click on Get It Free, and that is where it will ask, okay, now in which organization you want to install this tool. So whatever in organization you have created, you need to click on install, and that is all set, at least in terms of getting the main component or the prerequisite for that. Once you are done with that, there are 2 steps here. One, you need to create a project in Azure DevOps, which I just mentioned, and then you need to configure the connection. In order to do that, you will start with going into your Azure DevOps, create a new project, give them the description here like I've given. When I click on a new project, you will give them a name, a project name. You can give a description, and then you define the version control here. It can be Git or other available source controls, and then work item process. There are multiples available here, like a basic, agile, scrum. So in my demonstration, I'm going with the agile here, but you will click on that one, click on create, and that will create your project. And all you need to do after that is you need to now go into the test manager. And that is, if you are following the UiPath documentation, I'm sorry to say, but there is a little bit of confusion, or you will not, if you have not followed the Jira step previously, or you are doing for the first time, you may get a little bit confused because they have missed 2 steps there. So that is where pay a little bit attention here, because what they are, what it will say that, let me go back here actually, give you, so in the project settings, if you follow the UiPath documentation, the step they mentioned is about the AI keys. Once you have created this key, then you need to, this is the API key that will get generated, and that is what is required in the Azure DevOps. And when I'm talking about that, there are 2 steps that are missing in the official documentation, and I'll talk with some UiPath team if we can fix that one. But in order to do that, you will simply create a connection here, and then you will select, there will be multiple options, like Jira will come and Azure DevOps will come. So you will select your ALM tool of your interest, and then you will provide the service server name, a brief description, which is optional, a server URL, this is the URL of your organization that you have just created, and a path. Path is something that you will be created in the Azure DevOps. It will give you information how to create that one. And then you will be creating the defect type. There are 3 options, I think: none, bug, and issue. You will provide that. Again, the project name in the Azure DevOps that you will be integrating with. Click on the save button, and what it will do is, this is the last step which is important and missing, is now it will show you these options. You need to do is copy this key that is generated by this step, and this is required to integrate in the Azure DevOps. And then you will simply go into Azure DevOps. There you will be installing the extension UiPath Test Manager, which we just discussed a minute back. And that is where you need to provide the Test Manager URL, which is the URL coming from this link. Where is the link? Yeah, this is the link for your Test Manager up to this point. This is what you will give along with the API that we just generated. And that is how you will be integrate your Azure DevOps with the Test Manager. Similar documentation, exactly the steps remain same, even if you will go with the Jira, sorry, I mean, sometimes I call it Jira, I mean, but it is the tool, ALM tool, that is exactly the same, steps are same. You will basically go here in terms of the test manager, the test tool, the steps are similar. In terms of Jira, the steps are a little different, because here you need to go here in the apps, get the UiPath Test Manager app, get the app, and then you will start working on the Jira configuration, where the steps or the attributes that are required are pretty much similar. And this documentation is well covered in the UiPath integration with the test manager integration with the Jira. So you don't need to worry about this. This is pretty much very clean documentation on that side. So once you do that, you will be able to create your integrate your tool. And once that happens, what it will do is, now let me open. Let's see if I already have that one open. Okay. Okay. So if you will see here, now I'll come back to my requirements. There is only one requirement here, right? So if I go back here into my boards, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another user story. And that, let's say this user story I'm calling as so many mistakes, but okay. When I click here, and you can, those are not required, but when you do that and you click, which is the title here, what I missed here, description, this is the title. Okay, once I do that and click on save, my user story is created here. If I go to my work item, I have 2 stories. Let's come back here and let's refresh this one. See, so now my user story is automatically synchronized with the ALM tool of my choice. That is the one of the very important feature, because many times when you are working on an enterprise application, you don't have the leverage to go back and choose a different tool, or decide that you don't want to, because of the limitation, all your requirements needs to be migrated here. So sometimes the organization wants to continue with they have a standard tool across the organization, and that is where this feature is very important. So this is just a demonstration of how you can integrate it. But same way, test cases, let me go back into a different project, because there I have few example. And what I need to do here is I will go here, for example, let's say this tool. But here, if you will see, I have some test cases also. I should have here. Where are my test cases? Let me go back. Yeah. So similarly, if you have created your automation, you will be able to link that step here, but you have the option if it is automatically integrated with your test automation. You see here, this is automated, and that's why the status is automated here. You can unlink your automation. This is done using the studio. You can integrate your from the studio that this test case is linked with this automation, and then you can also link your, like we discussed about it also give you option where you can link your particular test case with a requirement also. That is what this feature will do. And the test set is basically a grouping, logical grouping of all your test cases. And then at the end, it's test results, which will give you a complete overview about what is the test result status. And then you can further go into the view logs and other details also. So this is at a high level is the test manager, which is a very important component. Then we will go back to the slide mode, and we will talk about, let me change this one. Okay, so now we will talk about the Studio Pro. So as I mentioned, Studio Pro is a canvas where you can draw your automation, and or in other words, you can create your test cases. And this is again a very powerful platform. It gives you not only give you options to create test automation, but you can always create automation using the workflow, right? And that is where, along with that, when you are creating your automations, this tool provides you a complete coverage of all the things that you can think about. It can give you a way to create application testing, which covers both Windows as well as web application testing. You can do you can create your RP testing, which means like once you have created your workflows, you can create test cases for that. And then also it provides you capability to create API automation and API testing, along with a special suite for SAP testing, and then integration with, I believe it is called the some tool, I forget the name, but it also provides the capability where it integrates with the third party to provide the capability for the mobile automation. So Studio here is what this is look like. And in the Studio, if you will go into the testing section or the testing activity, you will see all these different kind of activities specifically to the test automation related. Three important one are the bottom one, which is called the verify control attribute, verify expression, and verify expression with the operator. And we will see how that these are different. But the verify expression, these are the verify activity. That is what in the testing world we call it the assertion, right? That basically compares that if you are expecting a value of $20, whether the actually when you're running the automations, you're getting that value or not. And or basically, let's say if I am logging into an application, I should see a welcome screen, right? These activities gives me the capability where not only operator, I can also compare elements, whether that element is appearing or not. So those all three activities give us that option to verify our insertion. Along with that, there are a couple of other activities that are two activities, like the test data queue and the bulk add test data queue and the get test data queue are something related to the test driven, which I am going to cover. But other than that, it also provides you capability for the synthetic data that is just coming up. But this screen is all about mocking. There will be many scenarios. Let's say I have a access to, let's say my application is only available in production environment, Okay, or I don't want to during my testing, I don't want to update anything on my production environment or any application which is not accessible, right? So what we should do, should we wait whether that application become available, or how we can move along, I mean basically increment without actually depending upon increment by when I'm saying increment, like our testing increment, test automation increment, without relying on those activity or those application. And that is where the mocking comes into picture. This mocking can, using the UiPath mocking, you can mock a workflow, and you can like come in, basically set the values, what is expected. And by this one mocking, setting the mocking, now you will be able to go to the coverage without the actual need of that application. And then once you do that, the UiPath Test Suite also provide you a complete activity coverage, which is coming somewhere here, right? So once you do that, it also gives you a complete coverage about how that test activity performed, whether it covered all the tests, all the cases, or all the different paths or not. And then you will be able to see that coverage also. Now, the test driven is very important, because the key for a good test case is to making sure that you have enough data, right? But how you're going to get data, and that is where using the UiPath Test Suite, you have it is all based upon the data driven approach. What you can do, it is various ways through which you can provide the data for your test cases. One way is using the file, which is the most common way. You can write, for example, if I want to test different scenario for applying a loan, right? So some loans, maybe like if I'm giving a loan for, let's say 50,000, I want that to be a certain rate, right? So how I will verify that, if I'm providing, if I'm taking a loan for $50,000, my loan rate will be, let's say 7%. But if I'm applying a loan for 40,000 or $50,000, but I'm applying for 30 years loan, then my rate will be maybe a little higher, right? So I need to validate all those scenarios. One way is to simply provide all the data, including all the attributes that are required for your test case, along with the expected value in an Excel sheet or a CSV file. That is number one. Then if you will go back here in the previous activity, there are various activities like um, given name, last name, address, random numbers, random date, random string, random value, right? These all help in generating the synthetic data, which means when you will drop this activity address, what it will do is it will randomly generate an address for you that you can input for in your test automation or for a test case. Similarly, if I want a name, let's say I want to create a customer, right? These activities becomes very handy. Rather than you creating an Excel sheet or somewhere else, you can simply drag and drop these activity, which will generate a data for you. So this is all about the file generation, auto generation, and then there are data services. This is a very cool feature, because the disadvantage with the file-based system was, again, auto-generated is still limited, right? I may have custom data that I want to use, right? So auto-generate may not be applicable or may fit all the scenarios. So that's where the old approach file was there. But with the file, I need to continuously, if I want to change my variations, right? Let's say I want to add more data, right? That is where I may end up in refreshing the data and or like I mean providing that update again, right? But with the data service integration, you are creating objects, the data service entity that they call, and that is how you can add all your data in the data service, and you can use your data service to integrate with your test suite. This is a very cool feature. If I get a chance, not today, in the next meeting, I'll show you how that can be done. So these are the different ways. Along with that, there are data queues where you can upload your JSON format along with the data for to be consumed from your test management. So this is the studio provides you to give those all the synthetic data integration with your different like I mean data queue service. And basically using that, you can make your test case more robust and make sure that you have the coverage in different scenarios also. Integration with data service we have covered. We have covered the activity coverage, and along with that, UiPath Studio. Now this is very important right now. See about 10 different testers or multiple testers writing this automation, or I'll not call tester, all the automation engineer, right? We all have different style of working, but how we will ensure that at least bare minimum or those there are certain rules that must be followed, right? And that is where this feature about the workflow analyzer, that where you can construct your rules and you can enforce those rules. So anybody who is creating that test cases, all of them will be enforced, that there's some errors in your test case that you need to fix. So that is another important feature if a team of multiple test engineers or automation engineers are working on a case. So this is about the Test Studio. We have covered how Test Suite can be integrated with the automation platform. We gave an example of the computer vision last meeting, so I'll not go into that. Orchestrator is similar to that. Here is it is a complete a central place where you can see your automation. And let me jump here instead of going into slides because we are running short on time. So let me directly jump into the orchestrator here instead of going slides. If you will come here, you will see that you will be presented with the option of testing here, and that is where all the things happen. This is again similar like test manager. All your test sets can be logically grouped into a test set, and within that you have all the test cases defined here. And then once you execute a test case, all your execution, basically test execution, is at a given point what is your which test case you have executed and what was the outcome for that, right? And if you will see here, all that information is available here. And if you will go into more details, if I have used 10 different data or different variation, all these variations will come here and show with the variation of for example here with the variation 1 whether your test case passed or not. And then based upon the data that you have provided, it will show you execution result for each with the each variation. And then on top of that, we talked about continuous integration, right? That is where the test scheduling can come. Every time you can schedule your test cases to run after every midnight, so that every morning you ensure that your application is in a healthy state. And that is where I covered about the test data queues, which is basically now if you want to put data here within the orchestrator, so you have the activities in the studio where you can take the input from. This is high level orchestrator is, and in next session we will be covering all. We will take an example of a UiPath bank, and we will cover all the 4 modules. Robots are again, these are just the execution host. When I'm running this particular automation here, what it is going to do is it is going to run that automation using my test robots. And then there are, let me quickly just show one slide which is important, and I'm not going to presentation mode. But what is the difference that is between the test robots and the non-production robots? It becomes a little bit confusing. I'm also sometimes struggle to understand the different licensing model. And there's a last week, I think there was a very precise video about, and a very detailed, not precise, a detailed walkthrough about the licensing. And if you want to understand more about the different licensing model, you can go there. But this is a high level difference between the non-production UiPath robots or unattended robots and the test robots. There is some limitation, like with the test robots, what you can execute and what you can execute with the non-production robots. So then there are some test best practices. I'll not go into that one. And this slide deck will be shared. This is pretty much static. When we are talking about any test automation or test practices, most of them follow the same rules. Like, I mean, we need to make sure that all the test cases are covered, our requirements are covered. So if you will go here, it will list down all the best practices that you should follow when you are doing the test automation. So I'm sorry, I mean, I want to give more time today for the discussion, but this topic is so huge. And the next session, I want to keep totally hand on exercise where we are covering these points. But next session, we are actually going to do a hands-on exercise where we will be creating a test case, running that test case, even taking example of task capture and all the things that you can do in the test suite. So with that, I know there's a lot of information I've shared, and I apologize for taking a little bit more time on that one. But these important topics I don't want to miss, or at least touch on those topics at a high level. With that, I'll take a pause here and we will open for any question and answers. And I really apologize. I really want to give more time for this one. But our 4th session, even if we miss to answer anything, our 4th part is all dedicated to the scenarios, different scenarios, use cases that you're working on, and we can touch point on each of the questions that I missed in these meetings. So part 4 is all about nothing we are going to present. We will just talking about the actual real life use cases and talk about what challenges you are facing or any input or feedback.
Thanks, Atul. Great presentation. Yeah, so everybody feel free to take your, self off mute and ask any questions you have and turn on your videos if you want. This is really for us. There's quite a few MVPs on the call to address any questions that you might have.
Hello. I'm a fresher developer and I'm looking for new like abilities that I can learn so I can expand my experience and my practices, on this RPA industry. So my question essentially is how does this work into RPA as a robot or as an execution on an industry? Because what I'm seeing is like this is some kind of testing of softwares, but are we talking about softwares of web pages or softwares of companies or applications, all that kind of stuff? I can hear you until you have your microphone.
So sorry. And is Lucifer right? I mean, did I pronounce your name correctly? Can you hear me?
Is Lucifer, not Lucifer, but it's okay. No worries.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So a very important question, right? And that's where there are many test solution available, right? And what is, firstly, if I get your question correct, what exactly we are trying to capture here? So not only Windows. First, like if you will see here, I have covered, let me go back into this slide deck. And we are talking about all different type of testing that UiPath Test Suite can capture. Not only web application. Web application, when we are talking about application testing, it can be categorized into a web application or a Windows application, right? So Test Suite gives you a capability where, let's say I have an application, which I'm showing here, which is, let's say UiPath Bank. So what it does is, not only it provides a ability where you can write a test case around this automation, where let's say I'm applying for a loan, I'm creating an account, whether the account is getting created successfully. So that is just a part of it, where I'm automating my, not only automating, but I'm testing my application. That is one part of it. The other part of it is, let's talk about the RPA testing. Let's say you have a case where you have to create thousands of customer, right? That is your automation. You don't want to create it manually. There is the process you retrieve, you get thousands of customer on day-to-day basis in Excel sheet, right? So you want to take that data and you want to add that in an application, whether it's a window or web application. So you have created a workflow for that. And that's what we have in a workflow. You have simply created an automation for it, right? Automation is now, you don't know, you want to make anytime we release automation or a software, we want to make sure that that automation is working, right? And how you will achieve that can be achieved using the RPA testing. Sorry, I mean, where I jumped. So that is the other part of it, right? Not only application. That is where this is the main important point with the test suite is, when you have all the ingredients ready, like with you have the studio, you have your orchestrator, which comes as part of your automation, then you can extend that to cover the application testing also. Then when you extend that one without spending more or without introducing any new tool, with the same tools, now you can extend your application testing to API testing also. And if you have a SAP tool, you can now use the same framework, same set of studio to now cover your SAP testing also. And when I'm saying that, just giving a high level overview about it, if you can still see my screen?
No.
Oh, I have stopped sharing my screen from now. Okay.
So basically, I can now see with Test Suite or Test Manager if my automation error, if some error occurs, Now I can see if it's not my workflow or the structure of my RPA, but if it's the software of the application, what is having trouble with execution.
Exactly. For example, some element now with the design of your web application, let's say there was a button that is not available now, right? Or your application is supposed to work in a scenario when, let's say, and we are going to cover that in our next meeting, but let's say when you are putting a loan amount of $50,000 for 10 years, the application is programmed to give you a rate of 5%, right? But when you are running the application, you are getting a rate of 3%, right? So how we will make sure that these issues get caught before they get caught in production, right? That is where with the workflow and the test automation, you have simply created a workflow here by just simply right clicking on this space. And when I click create test case, it can give me an option to create test case. And when I have the test case, now what I can do is I can do the data generation, like I mentioned, and then you can create variations. So not only if you will keep up to this point, this is my workflow automation. With adding a test case become the test automation. Similar way, if I go extend my case, I don't have, let's say, any UI. I want to test the API. So with the features like that one, where I have a case here, which is totally working on an API, now I can use this API and create a test case, which will become a API testing. So I can extend with what I have. I can reuse my workflow to create test cases for that. In extension to that, if I don't have a workflow, I don't have automation, I can create the web application or the Windows application, my application testing test case also. So that is where it is not limited to only automation. It can be extended to the wherever application, practically any application you want, which is going to, this test suite is going to cover.
Exactly. And there's actually, I recently saw that the foundation course had this test, this course about test suite and test manager. And that's what made me interested about it, because it seems like a way to learn about all these possible errors that or the same robot can have. So yeah, I don't know. That's not
Definitely.
a question. That's just an accreditation, you know.
No, definitely, it is amazing. I mean, Shri can add more in our, I mean, in one of our account, we are using the test automation, and we are witnessing how many issues we are able to find with our application testing. And not only that, with the infrastructure, we started with the test suite got introduced for the testing, but now we have the infrastructure. There are so many use cases where we are easily able to integrate our automation. So that is where what I love about that UiPath is the whole family. If you will look, you can start with the automation or you can start with the test automation, but you can extend in either way you want. You can always use the same infrastructure for your automation or vice versa. Or tomorrow, if you want to go with document understanding, let's say, I mean, you have a document, your application is producing document, right? And you want to make sure that that document is generated correctly. Now you can use another integration with your test suite is your document understanding, or you can further categorize your emails using the machine learning models. So there's no limit what this suite can do for you, and it covers basically any practical software application that we can think of. But thank you so much for your comments.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question that I can answer?
Any other questions, anybody? Okay, so there were a couple of questions in the chat about just a recording for tomorrow. So I put where you can find that recording. It usually takes about 24 hours. And then don't forget that we have a session next week, next Tuesday night as well. And as Atul mentioned, the fourth session will open it up for people sharing. So if you have any questions, we'll ask one more time if anybody has anything.
I'll highly recommend everyone.
Meeting,
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Next meeting is Same day, same hour next week.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
Right. And that is the session where we will be mostly going into hands-on exercise. All your questions, like we mentioned about, we'll start with a basic example, a use case about a UiPath bank app, and we'll say how we can create automation, how we can convert that automation into test automation. We'll give some example about the test API, and we will go from there. All the different topics we covered today, we will be doing a hands-on exercise in the next session.
yeah, and you just find that at community.uipath.com and you'll find the information for that. So I'll put that in chat. Just go there. Well, thanks, everybody. We appreciate you coming tonight, and thank you, Atul.
Thank you so
for
much,
this great
everyone.
presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.